Several months ago, we covered the case of Luca Magnotta, or as the captain would call him, Puka Not Hata, and I couldn't agree more. But guess what? There's a new book coming out that we will be recommending this week on our show, True Crime Garage, and that book's called My Son the Killer, and this is by our friend Brian Whitney. Now, he's also written several books that we have recommended before. I heard that the new book was coming out, so I decided to jump on the phone and give Brian a call to ask him all about it.
Can you go ahead and give me the title? And I know it just recently came out.
Yeah, it just came out on Tuesday, and the book is called My Son the Killer, the inside story of one lunatic, one ice pick.
And this is about Luca Magnotta. Can you tell me, do you remember hearing about his crimes?
Yeah, I definitely do. I definitely was interested in his crimes, and I actually also, I ended up interviewing, for another book I did, Mark Merrick, who's a guy that, owns Best Gore, which is where the video was initially posted. And he ended up going to jail just for posting the video. So it was something that was on my radar, for quite a while.
And what did you, initial reaction, what did you find most shocking about his crimes once everything was linked up and connected to him and he was finally arrested?
Well, I mean, I didn't watch the video. I didn't watch the video the first time around. I just, I heard of the case, I followed the case and so on and so forth. So at the time, I mean, I don't know how shocked I was necessarily. I kind of became a little more shocked when I actually watched when I watched the video, which I kind of had to do because I was writing this book. Obviously, I had to actually check it out. So, but the other part of him obviously is his whole social media gig, the way that he's constantly kind of like trying to appear in a different way than he actually appears. And I think but I actually interviewed him for this book, which was also rather interesting. Because even with that social media aspect, he still kind of disavows the whole thing. Oh, I didn't do that, and I didn't do this. These are just people that are obsessed with me, and so on and so forth. So that whole vibe he has of doing these incredibly bizarre, outlandish things, and then never really, never owning them, if you get what I'm trying to say.
How did you become involved in this project or this book? Because I know that you have a good history, an extensive history with several true crime books. Were you approached to do this project?
Yeah, his mom actually wrote a book. His mom is Anna Yerkin, who I co-authored this with. So she wrote a book and she sold it to a Canadian publisher, a pretty big Canadian publisher, and for whatever reason they decided not to put it out. So then Anna went with her manuscript to Wild Blue Press, who I've published a few books with. But they didn't feel like it should come out as it was, because it was really sort of like, oh, hey, like Luca's my son. And there's a lot of like stuff in there that's obviously very heart-wrenching and so on and so forth, but they felt there needed to be sort of a journalistic approach because, they kind of felt they'd get murdered, no pun intended, if they just put out a book like by Luca's mom. It's not really pro-Luca, but it's a lot more kind to Luca than a lot of people would anticipate. So they got me on the project to kind of lend some sort of journalistic piece to it.
Well, and forgive me if I'm wrong because I've not read the book yet. It just came out on Tuesday.
That's cool.
So she talks a lot about his childhood and
right.
some of the abuses he may have suffered or portions of his childhood that she thinks may have something to do with how he turned out to be as an adult.
Yes. I mean, there's definitely a lot of it is about his childhood. His father was abusive towards him, then they divorced, and then his stepfather was even more abusive towards him. He was bullied constantly in school because he was obviously kind of a weird kid. And he also, this is kind of an interesting aspect of it, but he's been diagnosed with schizophrenia his whole life. Now, when I interview him, he disavows that. He's like, I'm not schizophrenic, like that, they just made that up, and it's ridiculous and it's a joke and I'm completely sane. But if you go back through his records and his history, he's been diagnosed with severe mental illness like pretty much since he was like 15 years old.
And he and his mother, their relationship became estranged at some point. When about did that take place?
Well, that happened after the cat videos, which you know what I'm talking about, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he
for other people
suffocated them with a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. And then there was another one with a snake. And he gave them all cute little names that were sort of like similar to the, one lunatic, they were like one boy and two kittens kind of things. But so basically, people from her family started getting in touch with Anna and saying like, there's rumors that Luca is responsible for these cat videos. She and he talked about it. He denied doing it, but she watched the video and she could see that it was him. So it caused an estrangement between them. Not necessarily because she was like, I don't ever want to talk to you again, but it was so, I guess, uncomfortable would probably be the word, and he kind of disappeared for a little while after that.
That's interesting. I didn't know that that those two were directly connected. Those videos and his mother and their estranged relationship. And
yeah, go ahead.
Just the cruelty of those videos alone. I couldn't imagine looking at a loved one, especially a son or daughter, and going, "Oh my God, what?"
No, well, and that's a big part of the whole book is sort of like still loving somebody that has done all this incredibly awful stuff, and the thing is too is obviously you are very involved in the true crime world, as am I, but when it comes to animals, man, I just can't even deal. I didn't watch those videos. I mean, I just don't want to watch them. I even wrote the book and I should watch them, but I just don't want to watch them. But yeah, so, and then what first happened was that he said it wasn't him, and then she was like, yeah, that's you, kind of thing, and then he started going off into the Manny thing. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about there, but he has this guy, Manny, that he claims makes him do all this stuff and would beat him up and would do these things. And Manny was the one, he wanted to sell the cat videos on the internet, and Manny forced him into doing it. And no one's ever found this Manny guy or has ever met this Manny guy. But Luca, when I talked to Luca, because I talked to him on the phone and wrote him, but he still says, oh yeah, Manny, people that know me know Manny, and so on and so forth. But so then, he tried to blame it on Manny, and then he just kind of bailed, for a period of months.
So Manny doesn't actually do anything himself. He forces Luca to do these things.
Yeah, Manny was involved in theory. If you read, there's a Watts report, Dr. Joel Watts, that came out during the trial. And so throughout that, and this is in the book too, but throughout that, he says Manny orchestrated the whole ice pick video as well.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's never provided enough information to lead anybody to this Manny who likely does not even exist.
No, and there's all those videos, like in court, that showed Luca going in and out, going in with the victim and then going out with, carrying the victim's body in different suitcases and stuff. And there was never another guy, that came in or out of that situation. So, and again, no one's even ever, one of the interesting things about the book too, though, is that the mother, Anna, she does think that Manny's like a real person. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, it stretches the imagination quite a lot.
Wait, let's back up a second. She thinks that Manny is a real person?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason when I said that originally about, getting me involved in the project. There'd be certain parts of it where, Luca would tell her, oh, this happened or that happened, and Anna would be like, man, Manny really, he really screwed my son up here or whatever. and Manny really, he did these horrible things, and poor Luca because of Manny, and it's universally pretty much accepted that there is no Manny.
Right. Well, and the interesting thing here is it's very, this isn't anything that we haven't seen before. This is very reminiscent of Dexter with his quote unquote dark passenger that
right.
accompanies him and assists him and directs him on killing. And in a way, though, too, it's very similar to the 1980s interviews with FBI and Ted Bundy, where Ted Bundy was willing to talk about his crimes and some despicable things that he did, but he would talk to these FBI agents in third person and refer to himself as the killer. He'd never name himself or say, I did this. He would say the killer did this and the killer did that. And it's almost a way of Luca being able to confess, but having someone to pass the blame to, and then his mother, Anna, adopting that same behavior.
Right. No, it's almost textbook in the sense of it. At one point he, after the kitten videos, he got in touch with a lawyer in New York named Romeo Salto, and at one point he was saying, Manny made me do all this stuff, and like Pete is after me, and everyone's after me, and they're trying to catch me, and Manny made me do this stuff, and he did a list of everything, like, Manny would punch me in the head, Manny would make me eat feces, he would tie me up and rape me, and Manny would, and this incredible list of all this, abusive stuff that Manny would do to him to make him like kill the kittens. And it's almost when somebody's schizophrenic and they're behaving in that manner, and then saying that, and again he denies it. It's really interesting when you talk to him, as you might imagine, because he has no real effect around any of this stuff. It's just like you and I talking,
Right.
We laugh and we tell jokes or whatever, but when it comes to the actual stuff that he did, he doesn't like talking about it like at all. Like he shuts right down. Like you can talk to him for the longest time or write him letters and he'll answer questions about anything and go off about anything and tell you anything about Carlo Homolka or like whatever. But when you get to that kind of stuff, he shuts right down. So like it's, again, it's almost textbook where like, somebody in that situation does something like that horrific, and they exactly, they put it on some other person. Oh, this person forced me to do that. Like it couldn't have been me that did that. But people don't talk about the Manny aspect that much, or the mental ill, which is understandable because he just did something so incredibly screwed up. It's hard to even get past that and try to figure out why,
Does he still have an obsession with Carlo Homolka?
No, but he claims, that's one of the things that he claims, the whole thing was like, in theory, he had like about 80 different like social media accounts, and like he would post on one and be like, with a different name and say, Luca Magnotta is going out with Carlo Homolka, and then like he'd post on 50 others and go, wow, that Luca sure is, so it'd be like one post, but he'd be like commenting like 50 times, like on each post, if you get what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So he denies all of that. He's like, no, I didn't do that. That was just a bunch of people obsessed with me that were doing that. So he doesn't even admit that he was in the first place. But again, he has admitted it before,
Right. Take me through the process of whomever getting you in touch with Luca. How does that go down? I mean, obviously, I don't know how Canada works, but here in the States, anybody could send a letter to just about any prisoner, and then you're at the mercy of the prison system if it actually gets to them. But as far as phone calls and letters and stuff, how does that go down?
Right. Well, two things. Like one, he has never like given an interview to which is interesting because he obviously was so into people paying attention to him. But he's never given an interview since he's been arrested. So that was interesting unto itself. But it was basically because of my relationship with my mom that it happened. But the other thing is I used to work for the ACLU as a prisoner advocate years ago. So like I actually have a lot of experience like going into prisons and writing prisoners and meeting with prisoners inside. And in this particular situation, it he's in Port Cartier, which is in Canada. Obviously, the prison is named Port Cartier, and they basically, the social work, he had to put me on a list, say that it was okay for him to talk to me. The social worker, the prison called and made sure it was cool, and then basically he called me. And as far as mail goes, I mean, you can mail prisoners letters. If you work, the organization you used to work for, I could put legal on the letter, and then in theory, the prison couldn't read the letter, but basically they can open the letters and read what Lucas says, and when I say if they want to. They weren't opened, they were clean, but it was just basically getting in contact and then answering the phone. Not too complicated, really.
All right. What does your gut tell you? Like, it seems to me like he's, when you talk about his crimes or want to interact with him regarding specific crimes that he committed, it seems like why is he shutting down? Is he embarrassed, do you think? Is that about the
I don't think so, because, the crimes themselves. Sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying. Yeah, I think that might be embarrassment. I also think it might be traumatic. I mean, the way Anna put it was this, that she just, like, it's really hard for him. He just doesn't like talking about it. He kind of flips out. So, I mean, I think when you talk to him, you can be like, oh, what's prison like? And he's like, oh, prison's fantastic. And I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I'm really happy in prison and I get to do whatever I want. And if you talk to him about something else, he's like, oh yeah, well, I was a successful model and I traveled all around the world. But then you go into that stuff, and I think he just shuts down, not necessarily because this is a guess, but kind of alluding to what his mother said. I just think it's really difficult. I think there are places that he probably doesn't, especially if you think about the fact that it was some sort of psychotic break and he's blaming it on another individual. Probably really difficult for him to think about what he did. I would imagine it would be difficult to think about that.
Well, and with somebody that's obviously so overly consumed with his personal image, do you think he's embarrassed by his mental health issues?
I think so, for sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he is very concerned with his, the letters themselves. I mean, you can't ask him anything without him sort of going off on, I don't, he puts down everybody. Oh, the media are stupid and most people are stupid. And it's very apparent that he really wants to appear like above everybody else. And so when it comes to that kind of thing, I think his pride is too much to even admit. If he testified at that trial, they tried to get him off on not criminally responsible. I mean, if he testified at that trial and said some of the stuff that he actually said, to the psychiatrist behind closed doors, he might have gotten off. But I don't think he could have. He claims he never wanted to do not criminally responsible. He argued with his lawyer every day. He's never been mentally ill, and he fought and fought and fought. And the psychiatrist is stupid. I can guarantee you at some point he's going to say, I'm stupid. I mean, there's no doubt he's going to be Brian Whitney. He's just, just because I'm saying things like this.
What does he say public? What does he say? And I know he doesn't give interviews, but what would he say to you about his mother?
Well, his mother and he are very close again now. Like they're very close. Like she goes and visits him. They actually have units in Canada at times where like she can go stay with him like in a trailer, like outside of the actual prison. I mean, it's still within a gate, but you know what I'm saying. So they're very close. I think they still are, but I'm not sure.
It's weird because, look, he's not the first person that has murdered or committed a crime to become famous. And I know that's really kind of simplifying his motivations. But
right.
It's a weird end game to me. Because to get the notoriety for having committed the crime, the crime has to be solved.
Right.
You have to be named as the perpetrator of the crime and therefore punished. So it's a real weird end game for me. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. Yesterday because I was talking to somebody about that yesterday, and it's interesting because he was kind of getting away with the cat thing.
Right.
And it's possible that he thought, very, it's very bizarre, but it's possible that he might have thought that there would be a whole bunch of people that would be like, oh, I bet this is Luca Magnotta, but they wouldn't be able to prove it. And he would just continue, like, taunting everybody. Because, of course, he nailed the hands and the feet, you know, so he was all about the taunting. And there's a couple things, too, about that whole thing. Like, one is that he told me that he didn't even know that he was being looked for. He was like, oh, no, I was just over in Europe just chilling out. I had no idea people were even looking for me. And I wasn't reading stories about myself in the internet cafe. I was watching Ava Gardner movies. Like, that's what he told me. But,
do you believe that though? Because he
oh, no, of course not.
Right.
No, of course not.
He gives this persona of being too cool for school.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah,
really,
no, I don't believe it at all. I mean, that's what I mean. Like, so he's like acting like, oh, I didn't even know they were looking for me. But the thing about the video, when you say that kind of trips me out, is at one point, to me, the weirdest part about it is at one point, like, I don't like being too graphic so I won't be, because it's just bizarre stuff. But at one point, he flips the torso over, and he starts like kind of like, you know, having sex with it, but he's not having sex with it. You know, he's simulating having sex with it. And how weird is that? If you get what I'm trying to say, like,
what do you mean? Is he using?
Well, when you think
is he using
he's still got his pants on, and it's like, and it like if you look at it, it's like it's so, you know, all these people that are whether serial killers or spree killers, they're taken on by this. They kill someone in some sexual manner because they so desire to do this sexual thing,
right?
And Luca apparently is pretending to desire to do this sexual thing, if you get what I'm saying. Like he's not even doing it because he's driven to do it. He's doing it because he just wants to freak people out so badly. You know, at one point he masturbated with like the hand, you know, and so on and so forth. Like all this stuff that was like, the video was like edited, you know, it was like, well, I mean, you get what I'm saying. I mean,
well, forgive me. I've read, like, what I did when we covered the case was I read descriptions of what people said they saw on the video, because like you, I was like, shit, man.
Good for you for not watching it. No, good for you for not watching it, because it's awful. You know, seriously.
So the only imagery I've seen of that video and of the cat videos were still, like, I saw a couple stills. And but I refuse to watch the video. So if I'm a little out in left field here,
no. I mean, I think you kind of should be out in left field. It's like in all reality, like when I would recommend that anyone listening to this does not like watch the video. You know, it's like for a couple of reasons. One, because you know it's just horrific and disgusting, and two, I felt like writing it. It's one thing if you're doing a podcast on it. I felt like, you know, if I was writing a book on it, I had to watch it. You know. It's like, just for moments like this, if someone would be like, oh, what about that? And I was like, oh, I never saw it, you know, like, I think that would just be, you know, but my point around all this is then, without getting into details, he did a lot of things that were theatrical. You know, it wasn't a video that was just like, I'm taking out all my sexual desires on this person and I'm going to videotape it for my own pleasure later. And that's disgusting and sick. And I'm not saying that's better or worse. What I'm saying is, that's fairly common. What's not common, in my knowledge anyway, is somebody filming something like this for theatrical reasons to fuck with people's heads. Excuse my language, I can't say that. Sorry. To screw with people's heads.
It's an adult show.
Sorry, I wasn't sure. To screw with people's heads and trip them out, and it's just, I can't think of anything else like it, honestly. Like, you think about, like, there are those videos, like the Three Guys of One Hammer videos, for example, those Russian guys, that they did, there's certain videos that they did that for themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, they never thought everyone else was going to watch it. It was just for them. So it's that to me is the kind of the oddest part of the whole thing. It's like, what was the end game, as you said before? Like, I'm not entirely sure.
That's what's incredibly strange about Luca, is that it's, in a way, he identifies with other monsters like himself, but in other ways he doesn't. He completely does not identify with them, and it's like, to me, it's like what any normal human being would do. They watch a music video per se and go, all right, well, I like so and so. Well, I want to dress like them. I want to dance like them. I want to sing like them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in his screwed up mind, what he's doing is, okay, well, what would this killer do? What would that killer do? What would I do if I were, 100% like this? And it's like you said, theatrical. It's a put on. It's a way of getting people to go, well, this guy's interesting because he's so sick and depraved that he did this.
Yeah.
And
no, I agree.
And so for him, look, we can all tell by videos that we saw of him that had nothing to do with murder, but you can tell by the way that this dude carries himself in different ways. He talks in different ways with different accents at different times.
Yeah.
His facial features. One thing I noticed in some of his videos too, it's almost like he can contort his face in different manners to be these different versions of Luca.
Right.
And not only can he do that to look that way, but he can maintain that facial version of himself for the entirety of interviews or the entirety of videos that are out there.
Yeah.
I think for me, I think this is something beyond schizophrenic. There's something else here that doesn't.
Yeah.
Either I don't know the terminology for it, or they haven't created one yet.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. It's incredibly we all know that person, and some of us have even been that person, in junior high or high school. Just like you just said, like, oh well, I'm not as popular as I want to be, so if I pretend to be like this or cut my hair like this or like then I'll be like more popular. But this guy, like, he starts off like that, and then he takes it. Like I said, even the social media thing. I mean, he would like put up some posts. Oh, do you know Luca's doing this? He would Photoshop, like, I think you're aware of things like this, but there would be Photoshopped versions of him, like in a sports car, or he would always be, oh, I'm in Russia doing this, and there'd be, or I'm in, he would trying to create this whole thing of like, that he was this really successful model and he was dating this serial killer and he was like a low rent male escort with some pretty bad mental illness, and then it just kept going and going. But like, who would ever think it would keep going to that point? And like you said, I'm not really sure either. Like, because I don't think there's ever been another case quite like it.
No.
When you think of that sort of act for that reason.
Regarding his, okay, so a couple things here. You touched on something that's interesting earlier, that if he would have been more honest and forthcoming during the course of the trial or made certain statements during court, you think that he could have got off or may have been sent to a different facility, which I think would be more likely. Canada, and forgive me, I don't have the guy's name in front of me, but Canada's got that famous case of the guy killing somebody on a Greyhound bus and eating part of his face, and that guy.
Oh, right, yeah.
That guy, from my understanding, they claimed he had, severe mental health issues, and I believe he's out living in some neighborhood now.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. He is out, I believe.
He only served like 7 years or something, or was locked up for 7 years. So we're talking about, had Luca said certain things, made certain statements during the court proceedings, we might be talking, his crimes are what, 2011, 2012?
2012 was when the murder was, 2011 was a cap thing, I believe,
And so, here we are, 2018, 6 years later, we might be sitting in the same boat with Luca Magnotta in 2020 of this guy getting released. Yeah,
and I think it's a pride thing. You think back to like maybe the Hillside Stranglers with like Kenneth Bianchi, like he bent in every single direction to like convince people that he was completely crazy. that he had multiple personalities and so on and so forth, and was making the whole thing up. And then you have somebody like Luca. I just don't think, again, I know I already said this, but that's the one thing when you talk to him he's the most adamant about. He was like, I never wanted to go in for NCR. My lawyer's name is Luke LeClaire. He's like, my lawyer, like we fought about it every day, and I refused to if he got up there and he said this guy Manny was telling me what to do, and ever since I was 16, he hears voices. This is what there's an extensive mental health records out there on him, and there's been stuff, for forever, just documenting all these different psychological breaks and scenarios that he went through. So who knows what might have happened, but the fact that he, fought against it the whole time with his own attorney definitely probably has something to do with the sentence that he received.
Now, I know early on he was trying to, well, I don't know, trying is the right word, but he was glamorizing his prison stay. What was his interaction with you regarding that?
Same. Same thing. Yeah, completely. It's great, and I play PlayStation. He also told me he takes care of animals. That he has a great time, and the guards are stupid, but and he got married. I think too. He got married to another prisoner who also killed somebody. Just completely glamorizes the whole thing. Again, he's fine. Everyone's stupid. He also uses a lot of, interestingly enough, he uses a lot of Trump things. He says a lot about fake news and the failing media and things of that matter. Does that kind of stuff a lot.
What's your gut telling you? Is he actually sitting around playing PlayStation and eating snacks and having a good old time?
There's no way anybody could. Again, I used to go into prisons, and there were some guys who'd kind of make their home there, and they'd be okay. But just when you look at his history, it's sort of like if you got a boyfriend that cheats on you constantly, and they just keep cheating on you, and they keep telling you they're not going to cheat on you, and they're probably still cheating on you. So, based on his history of him constantly just trying to present himself as doing so much better and being so much cooler than he actually is, I would assume that he's doing the same thing now, because he certainly hasn't changed his attitude about anything. In his mind, he never really quite says, even about I didn't say this, but even about the incident, he still says, all I'm going to say about this, there's a lot of other things that people don't know about that, and there are other people there, and there are different situations, but in his mind, everything else I've been saying about him mentally ill, about the kitten videos, about all the different social media accounts, it's all just because people are obsessed with him and they can't stop talking about him. It's all lies made up by people that are haters and wannabes and so on and so forth.
So he did interviews with you. Do you think that was do you think that he did the interviews with you because he knew that his mom was speaking with you and this book was coming out no matter what?
Yeah, that was why.
Spin it.
I think that might have been why, but also what I did in the book is that I didn't, as far as his quotes, I did one chapter that was just completely an interview with Luca, and then I just kind of put his quotes in through the rest of the book. So I didn't really editorialize on his quotes at all. I just put his actual quotes in there, and he also he says things sort of there was one that he said, I remember that he was like, the lies that people tell are what separate me from the rest of the world. It's that kind of thing. So with him, it's everybody else is lying and he's telling the truth. And that's kind of the thread that goes throughout, the whole interview is that everything has just been presented, almost like this all just happened to him by accident, that he didn't really have a role in any of it.
Does he still claim to have fans or does he believe that he has a following?
Oh, he does. People, I've written a few books before, and I've gotten so many different odd emails already from people being like, well, why'd you say that about Luca? And why'd you do this? And that's not really what happened with Luca. And I know what happened with Luca. And, there are people out there that are, I'm sure he still gets his letters and so on and so forth. I don't think his fans, so to speak, I mean, they're probably pretty few, but he definitely has people that are still kind of obsessed with him, I would say, for whatever reason.
Well, I'm going to pick up the book. Why don't you tell me where's the best place to pick up the new book?
It's published by Wild Blue Press. You can find it on their website. You can also find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, basically wherever you get your books online.
Perfect. Well, Brian, it's good talking with you as always, and I look forward to your next project.
Always a pleasure, man. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Have a great day.
You too, man. Take care. Bye-bye.